In the heart of Shreveport, Louisiana, where summer heat clings to the skin like molasses and southern hospitality is worn like a badge of honor, there are still some lines drawn in invisible ink. Lines that whisper, "You don't belong here," even when all you came to do was swim. This is the story of a 16-year-old boy named Jordan Lawson. A boy who wanted nothing more than to enjoy a summer afternoon with his friends. A boy who found himself on the receiving end of a familiar, exhausting narrative. But this story doesn't end in silence. Because Jordan Lawson is not alone, and his mother is the most powerful woman in the state. It was a Saturday, mid-July. The sun was blazing, casting brilliant reflections on the community pool's turquoise water. Kids splashed and laughed, families lounged in chairs, the smell of sunscreen mixing with chlorine and barbecued hot dogs from the nearby snack bar. Jordan Lawson walked through the gated entrance with two friends, towel over his shoulder, a smile on his face. He'd just finished a summer basketball camp and was ready for a well-earned break. But almost immediately, he felt it. That heavy stare. That weight in the air. As if someone had turned down the temperature and raised the pressure. He ignored it, the way his mother had taught him to do. Keep your head up. Be respectful. Let your character speak louder than anyone's prejudice. The boys found a spot under a shaded umbrella and dropped their stuff. As they stepped toward the pool, a voice cut through the chatter. "Excuse me. Excuse me." Jordan turned to see a middle-aged white woman standing near the lifeguard chair, her manicured fingers clenched tightly around a clipboard. Her name was Trudy Whitmore. Neighborhood Committee President, HOA Enforcer, and self-declared protector of community values. She wore oversized sunglasses and a visor, like she was preparing for a battle with the sun, and with anyone who didn't look like her. Jordan blinked. "Yes, ma'am." Her lips pursed. "Do you live here?" Jordan answered honestly. "No, ma'am. My friend, Darius, does. I'm here as his guest." She crossed her arms. "Guests have to be registered at the front desk. You didn't sign in. That's strike one. And guests are limited to one per household. That's strike two. And I know who Darius is, and his family already had a guest last weekend. That's 3 strikes. He tried to clarify. I wasn't here last weekend. I haven't been to this pool all summer. Well, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm going to need you to leave. Jordan looked back at his friends, confused. They hadn't even gotten wet yet. Ma'am, I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I just came to swim. If it's about signing in, I can do that now. She cut him off. I said you need to leave. Now. He could feel every eye on him. Whispers. Side glances. Even the kids stopped splashing for a moment. The silence was louder than the shouts. I didn't do anything, Jordan said quietly. Trudy leaned closer, her voice sharp like glass. You people always say that. Jordan clenched his jaw. His chest burned, not from shame, but from something deeper. Something hotter. But he refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him break. He gathered his things slowly, nodded to his friends, and walked out of the gate. He sat on the curb outside the pool, staring at the clouds. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. He'd been followed in stores. Called articulate like it was a surprise. He'd seen his mother endure microaggressions dressed up as compliments. But this felt worse. It was public. Humiliating. And most of all, it was undeserved. Jordan pulled out his phone. He didn't want to bother her. But she always said, call me if you need me. Especially when it's about who you are. So he called. His mother, Governor Cynthia Lawson, answered on the second ring. 15 minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled into the neighborhood parking lot. The doors opened, and out stepped a woman who commanded attention like thunder. Governor Cynthia Lawson, Louisiana's first black female governor, walked toward the pool entrance wearing a simple navy pantsuit, no entourage, no security detail. Just purpose. She found Jordan sitting quietly, fists clenched in his lap. She knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "Tell me what happened." He did. She listened. Said nothing. Then stood. And walked straight through the pool gates. The moment she stepped onto the pool deck, silence fell again. This time, not out of prejudice, but out of uncertainty. People recognized her. A few gasped. Trudy, still holding her clipboard, looked up and froze like a deer in headlights. "Ms. Whitmore?" Governor Lawson called out, her voice calm but unmistakably powerful. Trudy blinked. "Yes. I'm Cynthia Lawson. Jordan Lawson's mother. Governor of this state. And I'd like to have a word." Trudy tried to smile. Oh my. Governor Lawson. I didn't recognize you." Cynthia held up a hand. "Let's not pretend. You recognized something. Let's talk about what that was." Trudy stammered, glancing around. I was just enforcing pool rules. Nothing personal, of course. We have guidelines for guests." "And yet," Cynthia said, stepping closer, "I understand there were several other teens here today, also guests, who were not asked to leave. Only my son. Can you explain that discrepancy?" Trudy's mouth opened and closed. I didn't realize." "You realized exactly what you were doing," the governor replied. "You saw a young black boy at a pool in a neighborhood where you didn't think he belonged. And instead of checking your assumptions, you checked your clipboard." Trudy's face flushed. The governor continued. "You embarrassed him in front of his peers. You made him feel unwelcome. Less than. And for what? Because of the color of his skin? Because of the zip code on his ID?" People around the pool shifted uncomfortably. Some stood. Others pulled out their phones. This wasn't just a scolding, it was a reckoning. "I'm not here as the governor right now," Cynthia said, her voice steady. "I'm here as a mother. And I'm tired. Tired of these small injustices that chip away at our children's joy. Tired of seeing them treated like suspects before they're seen as students. Tired of good kids being labeled threats because of outdated, racist assumptions." She turned to the crowd. "This happens every day. And not every child has someone who can walk through that gate and speak for them. So if I have to use this voice, this title, to make sure my son is heard, then I will. But understand this, he should have been heard without me." By the next morning, the video of the confrontation had gone viral. News stations picked it up. Hashtags trended. Parents began questioning their HOAs. Conversations about racial profiling in safe spaces, like pools, neighborhoods, and schools, exploded across the country. Trudy Whitmore resigned quietly that week. The neighborhood pool updated its guest policies and underwent diversity training. And Jordan Lawson? He went back to the pool the next weekend, head high, surrounded by friends and neighbors who now saw him in a different light. Not because of who his mother was, but because of who he was. Courageous. Composed. And unwilling to be invisible. This world teaches some children to shrink. To avoid attention. To walk small in spaces not made for them. But sometimes, silence isn't strength. Sometimes, the most powerful act of resistance, is simply standing still. And refusing to leave. Jordan Lawson didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. He didn't curse the sky. He just stood his ground. And when he needed her, his mother stood beside him. In that moment, the pool wasn't just water. It was history. It was memory. It was movement. And one boy's presence became a ripple. That turned into a wave. This is the thread of time. In the days following the incident, Jordan found himself at the center of attention he never asked for. At school, classmates who once barely noticed him now nodded in quiet respect. Teachers subtly adjusted their tone, aware of the boy who had faced down discrimination without even raising his voice. But with the attention came a different kind of weight. Jordan sat at his kitchen table, scrolling through the comments on the viral video. For every message of support, there was another laced with venom. Playing the race card again. She only cares because she's governor. He should have just followed the rules. He stared at the screen, the words like cuts beneath the skin. Cynthia walked in, 2 mugs of tea in her hand. She didn't need to ask. She'd seen it all before. In her own inbox, in newspaper op-eds, in whispered conversations behind closed doors at the Capitol. "You okay?" she asked. He shrugged. "I didn't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to swim." She sat beside him. "I know, baby. And you have every right to just be a kid. But sometimes, the world sees your skin before it sees your smile. And when that happens, your truth becomes bigger than you." He looked down. "It's not fair." "No. It's not." She touched his hand. "But it is powerful. Because the world saw you. They saw how you stood your ground with grace. And now they have to think twice before doing it to the next kid." Within weeks, community meetings across Louisiana began addressing implicit bias in public spaces. The governor launched a state initiative called the Belonging Project, a comprehensive training and policy review for all public recreation facilities, schools, and neighborhood associations. It wasn't just about swimming pools. It was about benches in parks, seats on buses, hallways in schools, everywhere black children had been made to feel like guests in their own communities. Other states took notice. Georgia, Mississippi, even parts of Texas reached out to Governor Lawson's office for guidance. National media outlets interviewed Jordan. But he never let the attention inflate him. "I just did what my mom taught me," he said. "I stood with dignity." Behind the scenes, however, the governor faced pushback. Lawmakers accused her of dividing communities. Donors threatened to pull support. The opposition party spun narratives of overreach. But Cynthia stood firm. "If defending my son, and children like him, is controversial," she said in a press conference, "then controversy is exactly where I'll stand." One Sunday afternoon, weeks after the incident, Jordan and Cynthia returned to that same pool, not as a statement, not for a press op, but just to swim. The community greeted them warmly. A few parents apologized quietly for not speaking up sooner. Others simply nodded, eyes heavy with guilt and reflection. Trudy's old clipboard now hung behind the front desk, framed with a placard. "Let every child belong." Jordan took off his shirt, revealing a simple necklace his grandmother had given him, a tiny gold lion. "Still wanna swim?" his mom asked. He grinned. "Only if you'll race me." They dove in together, laughter erupting from the crowd as Cynthia tried to keep up. For the first time since that hot July day, Jordan felt something he hadn't in weeks: free. A few days later, Jordan received a handwritten letter in the mail. The envelope had no return address, only the initials LJ. The handwriting was neat, old-school cursive. Inside, a short note. "Dear Jordan. When I was your age, I was pulled out of a pool for the same reason. I was called names. Told I didn't belong. That was 1963. I never went back. But I watched your video. And for the first time in 60 years, I felt healed. You changed more than you know. Keep walking tall, young man. LJ." Jordan showed the letter to his mom. She smiled, her eyes misty. "Your ripple," she whispered, "just reached another shore. In the months that followed, Jordan became an unintentional figure in a national conversation. But he never chased the spotlight. Instead, he focused on school. He wrote an essay about the experience titled, "The Day I Was Told I Didn't Belong, and Why I Stayed Anyway." It won a statewide award. He joined a youth advisory board to help design equitable public policies. He even helped develop a new community app to report and address discriminatory behavior in real time, an idea that came to him while sitting on that poolside curb. And Cynthia? She continued to govern with grace and fire. Her approval ratings rose. Not because she played politics, but because she lived her truth. Fiercely. Publicly. Without apology. In a world where so many stories of injustice end in silence, this one echoed. A boy. A pool. A moment that could have passed like so many others. But didn't. Because one child refused to be made small. Because one mother refused to look away. Because one community, flawed as it was, chose to reckon with itself. And because sometimes, it only takes one act of quiet resistance to rewrite generations of noise. So the next time someone says, "You don't belong here," remember Jordan Lawson. Remember the pool. Remember the ripple. And don't leave. Not quietly. Not ever. This is the thread of time. It was late fall when Jordan sat on the back porch with his grandfather, Samuel Lawson, a quiet man who had lived through every shade of the South's racial history. The air was crisp, leaves fluttering down in burnt oranges and deep reds. Samuel rocked slowly in his chair, pipe resting beside him, eyes gazing out at the horizon. "I saw the video," he said softly. Jordan looked over. "Yeah." Samuel nodded. "Didn't say nothing at the time, because I needed to sit with it. I needed to remember some things." Jordan stayed quiet, listening. "I remember being 10 years old. 1956, my daddy took me to a pool in Baton Rouge. It was hot that day, real hot. I remember thinking I could finally feel what it was like to float." He paused, eyes glassy. "But they didn't let us in. Not because it was full. Not because we weren't clean. But because we were us." Jordan swallowed hard. "I never swam after that. Never learned how. But you, Jordan, you stayed. You looked them in the eye and claimed your place." Samuel turned to him. "You broke a chain I didn't even know was still wrapped around my ankles." Across Louisiana, pools began hosting belonging days, free entry events focused on inclusion, celebrating diversity, and offering free swim lessons to kids from historically excluded neighborhoods. Lifeguards were trained not just in CPR, but in cultural sensitivity. The image of Jordan, standing calm in the face of prejudice, became a symbol used in training videos and policy briefs. Even Trudy, the woman who had started it all, issued a public apology. She appeared at a town hall meeting, voice trembling as she spoke. "I didn't see a young man. I saw my bias. And for that, I am deeply sorry. It didn't erase what happened. But it started something that a year later, Jordan was invited to speak at a national youth summit on civil rights and leadership. He almost said no. He didn't feel like a leader. He just wanted to swim. But Cynthia encouraged him. "This is bigger than us now. They need to hear your heart." Standing at the podium in Washington, D.C., in front of a crowd of thousands, Jordan took a breath. "When I was told I didn't belong at a pool, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe my skin was too loud. Maybe my peace made them uncomfortable. But I learned something that day. That belonging isn't about permission. It's about presence. And I'm not asking for a place anymore. I am the place." Thunderous applause echoed through the chamber. Back in Shreveport, a mural now stood just outside the community pool, a stunning painting of Jordan standing beside Cynthia, with children of all races swimming behind them. Above it, in bold letters, "You belong." Always. Each year on the anniversary of that day, the Lawson family hosted a community cookout at the pool. What had once been a scene of division became a ground of unity. Neighbors who barely spoke now broke bread together. Kids played. Music danced through the air. And in a quiet moment near the end of one of those afternoons, Cynthia and Jordan stood together, looking out over the water. "You proud of me?" he asked. She smiled. "Always." Then he grinned. "Wanna race again?" She laughed. "Only if I get a head start." They dove in together, mother and son. Symbols of resistance. Messengers of change. Embodiments of grace under fire. In every thread of time, there are moments that unravel us, and moments that weave us back together. What happened at that pool wasn't just about race. It was about recognition. About seeing someone for all that they are, not just what they look like. Jordan didn't raise his voice. He raised the bar. And Cynthia didn't flex her power. She walked in it, with calm, deliberate truth. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror, held up to a nation still learning how to see clearly. So the next time you see injustice, don't wait for the powerful to fix it. Stand. Speak. Stay. Because every act of quiet courage echoes. Every truth told out loud ripples. And every thread strengthens the weave. You belong. Always. In memory of those who were told they didn't. Thread of time.